Assalamu alaikum. Hello, welcome to another wonderful MACFEST 2021 event. Today, I'm delighted to introduce the first event of the day, which is in partnership with Manchester Museum. Our event today is Islamic collection at the Manchester Museum. Before I hand you over to the Manchester Museum, I just want to let you know that you can follow our handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Facebook, it is MACFEST, and on Instagram and Twitter, it is MACFEST UK. So please do enjoy our event, and then I will hand you over to the Manchester Museum. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Esme Ward and I'm Director of Manchester Museum at the University of Manchester. Last year, our MACFEST event took place in the museum, surrounded by people, energy, noise. It was wonderful. And of course, we're hugely sad that we're not able to do the same this year. But we're delighted that we're able to contribute to MACFEST 2021 to support Kezra and her team with their really wonderful programme this year. We hope next year our contribution will again be in the museum, and the following year that it will be in our new South Asia gallery, which is opening in 2022. And over the next hour, you're going to hear a bit more about that South Asia gallery, the process we're taking for its development, have an opportunity to meet some of the South Asia Collective members, our co-curators, as they talk about how they got involved and what the gallery means to them. And then that will be followed by a presentation from a good friend of ours, Uthra Rajgopal, an independent textile curator, who's going to showcase the recent exhibition, Four Corners of One Cloth, Textiles from the Islamic World. You'll hear more about the UK's largest textile collection and a chance to ask Uthra questions at the end of her presentation. So for now, I look forward to hosting you in person, to meeting you in person and seeing you in the museum when we can. But I'm going to hand over to Uthra and colleagues for what I know is going to be a fascinating presentation.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I'm Nusra Ahmed and I'm leading on the Manchester Museum South Asia Gallery. It's great to have the opportunity today to tell you more about the gallery, how this started and how it's shaping. To give you a little bit more history, Manchester Museum, part of the University of Manchester, first opened its doors in 1890. It is the UK's largest university museum, with a collection of about 4.5 million items expanding from every continent. And each year, we welcome over 500,000 visitors to the museum. Our vision for Manchester Museum is to build understanding between cultures and a sustainable world. And over the next 2 years, we are working towards an exciting new £14 million project called Hello Future. And this will transform and develop the museum in becoming more inclusive, imaginative, and relevant to the diverse communities it serves. The South Asia Gallery is a keystone of Hello Future, and it will be the first and largest permanent gallery in the UK dedicated to exploring stories, experiences, cultures, and contributions of South Asian diaspora communities in the UK. It will be a place for emotional connection and new narratives, and will bring together lived experience and world-class collections. At its centre, there is a unique performance space for sharing new perspectives and stories through dance, music, poetry, recitals, talks, and discussions. The gallery will focus on the histories and cultures of South Asia. That's Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, from prehistory to modern day, and it will house mainly cultural collections as well as some natural history. And as a landmark partnership with the British Museum to bring archaeological and ethnographical materials, sculpture, textiles, paintings, and ceramics from the British Museum to Manchester to be displayed alongside the very best of Manchester Museum's own South Asian collections. So placing Manchester Museum's South Asian diaspora at the heart of the gallery, Manchester Museum has adopted a co-production approach, inspiring diverse communities to come together with the ambition to co-curate several collection-based anthologies to create narratives and select collections. And over the last 2 years, through workshops and research visits, the South Asia Gallery Collective, made up of community members, artists, designers, historians, journalists, lawyers, scientists, writers, students, and others, have come together with museum professionals to explore stories and subjects that they really care about and want to share. And through this approach, the museum has received over 30 co-curation proposals, providing several overarching themes, which include British Asian, environment, science and mathematics, journeys, language, religion, movement and change. Each anthology to be a platform to share, celebrate, educate, and commemorate South Asian history and heritage. Here are a few of our South Asia Gallery Collective members sharing their personal reasons for becoming involved and what the gallery means to them. Hi everyone, lovely to see you today, and I'm just going to introduce you as some of our collective members. You're obviously not everyone in the collective, but really grateful that you could come today and share some of your experiences and your story around the South Asia Gallery. So I think we'll kick off with Samar. Do you want to start first?
Basically, I live in Manchester. I came up from London in 1995. I did history as a first degree, and then ended up by being a legal aid lawyer. I qualified as a solicitor, and I basically specialized in immigration, asylum law. I stopped doing that in 2014. Then did some welfare rights, disability appeals, and that job ended a few months ago. And I'm now doing an Open University module in art history. That kind of sums me up.
All right, Nazma, do you want to go next?
Hi, my name's Nazma. I am a Manchester native and I work in digital marketing. I love visiting art galleries and museums, and when I heard that this project was happening, I was just really keen to be involved in any way, shape or form, just to be part of this new exciting thing that was happening. And initially, I didn't have a story of my own that I wanted to tell. But having seen everybody else's and the process of just learning and being inspired by what other people were saying, I started to have a think about what interested me the most and what I would like to see in a museum dedicated to South Asia. So there's two things that I was interested in. The first one was fashion. So I used to run one of the first British Asian fashion blogs. I started blogging in 2007, so I was a very early adopter. So there was lots I could say about South Asian fashion.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Hi, I'm Shuma, again from Manchester. I was also a very late joiner. I got to hear about the SAG Museum, South Asia Gallery from a friend, and decided to be involved mainly because I have a child and I want him to feel his both Asian and British identities more, feel more connected to his British and Asian identities. I am a first generation Indian. I'm married to a second generation British Asian. So I understand, when my husband was growing up, I understand how he struggled with his Asian identity because he grew up in a very white area. So for my child, I want him to not have these identity issues, and I want him to feel integrated.
Hi everyone, my name's Ala. I'm a student at the University of Manchester studying international business, finance and economics. I joined the South Asia Gallery Collective because of my genuine interest in South Asian culture, and also because my mum's ancestors were originally from India.
It's just really interesting to see that finally in the northwest of England, we will finally have in the museum something that will reflect the community, the South Asian community in Manchester and in Greater Manchester. And that's really, really good. Because previously when I went to, say, for example, Manchester Museum, the other museum, you'd see odd bits, nothing much. And it really did make you think, because I'd compare it to the British Museum. And I think there's a section there. Why isn't there a section in Manchester? Something should be done. So it's brilliant and excellent that this is happening.
I've absolutely loved meeting everybody else and learning about their stories. Like the science side of things really fascinates me. Everybody has their own individual interest area. And as part of this, we've got to speak to each other, learn about each other's stories and delve into different things. We're also working with the British Museum. So as someone who doesn't come from an academic or a museum background, it's amazing to be able to talk to these experts and to have my story be taken on and have the professional museum spin on it. I'm really proud to contribute something to the future generations of Manchester, and I'm really excited for what's going to happen.
I think that it's really important that I'm part of the South Asia Gallery, especially as a young person, because I feel like my views and opinions are actually listened to, and it's good to be co-curating next to museum professionals, because not many young people get the opportunity to do so.
What's interesting about bringing everybody together in this collective is that within the South Asian community, people are learning about different cultures and different aspects of South Asia that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily get an opportunity to do so. I mean, from my own point of view, all of our family friends are all Tamil speaking. You know, my dad was fluent in Hindi and Urdu and Malayalam, I think. But in terms of our social groups and our social network, it was always very much based on our own language. Yeah, I wanted to touch on that point as well, because my child is also growing up within the Bengali community, and I want him to learn more about the wider, the whole of South Asian community. So again, in India, we get a different exposure. Here, we are limited within just our community. So and also I'm learning through this process of other states, other countries, so much more. So. Yes, I mean, and it's great because I can talk about personal experiences and share personal experience with people in this collective, and people just get it.
Yeah, I think that really struck with me as well, about how much we share, and usually we kind of look at how very different we are and we pick on those points, but the collective, I think, is made up of so many different people, not just South Asian people, but even the people that are not South Asian. There's some element to us sharing some of that culture, and some of, whether it's the food, language, whatever it is, it's kind of a bonding that brings us together. We're really looking forward to developing programming partnerships at local, national and international levels. Hello Future will bring opportunities to host ambitious museum-based events and collaborations, building bigger audiences and new relationships. The new exhibition hall will transform the ability to produce, host and tour internationally significant shows and profile South Asian artists and organisations. We really hope that next year we will be able to host our MACFEST events at the museum itself, and thereafter within the new South Asian Gallery. Being of South Asian diaspora myself, I feel very passionate about being part of helping to shape the gallery. Both as a child and adult, I wasn't able to identify with museums as their objects, stories and exhibitions didn't reflect me or my background. The impact of South Asia galleries were without doubt huge, not only for South Asian people, but for all communities. The gallery is the first of its kind, and it will bring people from all sorts of backgrounds together to learn about each other, from each other. I've been working with the South Asia Gallery Collective for over 2 years now, and it continues to be a really enjoyable and rich experience. We're currently at the really exciting stage of bringing all those individual stories together to create a shared vision within overarching anthologies. Being already deeply connected to South Asian heritage, members of the collective are continuing to co-design the gallery with such passion, very much driven by desire that the gallery will provide a sense of belonging and their communities, but for many other generations to come. We'll continue to bring in new voices and ideas. For more information about how you can get involved with the South Asian Gallery, please take a look at the Manchester Museum website or get in touch with me. My email is nusratahmed@manchester.ac.uk. We look forward with you joining us on our journey and being part of our Hello Future. I'm going to pass on now to Uthra Rajgopal, independent textile curator, who will showcase the recent exhibition, Four Corners of One Cloth, and there will be a chance to ask Uthra questions at the end of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to my colleagues Nasrat and Esme for kindly inviting me to speak to you all on behalf of Manchester Museum and about the Islamic collections in the city. And it's my pleasure to be part of MACFEST 2021, and a warm welcome to all our online audience as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide myself from this presentation, so you will just see a series of slides that I have prepared for you. So Manchester houses four main cultural institutions that come together to form part of the Manchester Partnership. We have Manchester Museum, the John Rylands Library, Manchester Art Gallery, and the Whitworth. And across those four institutions, there are thousands upon thousands of objects. And those objects range from coins to metalwork, works on paper, prints, oil paintings, wallpaper. We have textiles and arms and armory. And in 2016, the partnership came together to better understand all the objects that relate to and connect to Islamic art and material culture. And I was very fortunate to be involved in this project that was funded by the John Ellerman Foundation. And so when I joined the Whitworth, I was working mainly with the textile collection, and here I am in the stores looking at the textiles that we have. The Whitworth holds about 26,000 items alone, so you can imagine the total number of objects across the partnership. And here you'll see, just to give you an insight, that the textiles are very carefully stored and wrapped in conservation grade material. And we only handle these objects as and when absolutely necessary, because like human beings, textiles like to be left undisturbed, lying down in a darkened room for long periods of time. So only as and when necessary do we handle these objects. So one of the most interesting textiles that we have at the Whitworth is the fragment of the kiswa that you're looking at on the left-hand side of your screen. So this fragment dates back to the early 20th century, at a time when the kiswa was still being made in Cairo in Egypt. It is handwoven in silk, and you can see that there is script woven into the cloth. And this script in Arabic praises Allah and Muhammad, Allah's messenger. And so the declaration of faith reads, "O God, there is only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and may his glory be exalted." And so how did this fragment come to Manchester and come into the collections? Well, it came through a collector of textiles called Geir Anderson, who was actually part of the Royal Army Medical Corps, and he was posted out to Egypt, where he was seconded to serve as part of the Egyptian army. And he was there during the early 20th century, having left Cairo, which he very much adopted as his second home in 1942, returning back to England due to health issues. And so whilst he was there, he collected a number of these amazing textiles. And we believe he came to have this fragment of the kiswa as a result of the kiswa being made newly handwoven every year. And after it was used to cover the Kaaba in Mecca, it would be distributed. And that's how we believe that Geir Anderson came to have one of these fragments. He may have purchased it from another textile collector. And so this fragment was placed in an exhibition called Four Corners of One Cloth, Textiles from the Islamic World in 2018 at the Whitworth. And it really formed the heart of the exhibition. And you'll see on the right-hand side that it was given its own special plinth, its own special case. And it was placed in the center of the gallery facing Mecca. And I have to tell you that this was the first time the fragment of the kiswa was on display, despite the fact that it had come into Manchester's collections in the 70s. In fact, it would have come in earlier than that, but it eventually came to the Whitworth in the 1970s. But despite its long confinement, if you like, in the collections, this was the first time it was on display. And so it created a huge buzz. And we even ended up having a marriage proposal in front of the kiswa, orchestrated by the mother-in-law to be. And you'll be pleased to know that the lady in question said yes, she agreed to marry the gentleman, and they are now happily married. And so this was on display, as I said, as part of the exhibition Four Corners of One Cloth. And this is a closer look at the kiswa. And you can see on the left, we have a colour bar and a little ruler. And just as a note, when we're photographing objects from the collection, we tend to display this little colour bar alongside it so that people have an accurate idea of the actual colours of the object and get a sense of the scale and the size of it. This particular fragment of the kiswa is measuring around 46 by 72 centimetres. And today, as you may know, the kiswa is made in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And so previously, as like I said, this would have been made in Cairo. So one of the other objects that went on display was this talismanic shirt, which was made during the 19th century. It's hand woven in cotton and it's hand painted with codes, magic squares and symbols and verses from the Quran. And this garment would have been worn against the skin to protect the wearer. And typically this garment would have been worn either perhaps going into battle or on some sort of journey. and it invokes the protection of God, of Allah. And on the shoulders of this garment, you have the 99 names of Allah, and on the far right hand side of the screen you have a close-up detail of one of these magic squares, which include codes and numbers relating to the verses of the Quran. And if you want to learn more about this piece, I've included a link to the work at the Whitworth, and you can look for this in Search the Collections. The little number and the reference that you see, T.9780, is what we call the accession number, and that helps us to locate this piece when we're searching through our collections. And it will also help you when you go to the online search engine in locating this particular object. So one of the other areas that we looked at were embroidered and woven cloths as well. And in this slide, you will see sitting at the bottom right-hand corner a pair of wooden shoes. In fact, there's a very small pair alongside a very tall pair. And these wooden shoes are actually part of the collection at Manchester Museum. And these shoes came to be displayed in four corners of one cloth because we wanted to put together a case about water. And so these shoes are actually bathhouse shoes. And this case, as I said, was put together to do with the theme of water. As we know, water plays a very important and significant role in the Islamic religion and Islamic culture. And so at the top of the case, you will see displayed a blue shawl. And this, in fact, is a peshtemel, a Turkish shawl that would have been worn going into and out of a bathhouse. And you'll also see some red script, and that relates to the date, and it also has script on it invoking good health to the wearer of this shawl. And so entering a bathhouse, you would have worn this shawl. And if you were very rich and important, you would have been standing on very tall bathhouse shoes like the ones you see in the far right-hand corner. And you would have had attendants to see to you in the bathhouse. And then once you left the bathhouse, you would again be wearing this shawl to invoke your good health and happiness, having been bathed and enjoying that process. What we also see in this case are a number of embroidered towels or napkins, but these would not have been seen in the bathhouse. Instead, these napkins or towels would have been given to a guest upon entering their home. And so you would have been presented with a tray, and the tray would have been typically covered with one of these beautiful embroidered napkins. And on this tray would have been a bowl of water, and you would have been invited to rinse your hands in the bowl of water, and it might have been infused with rose petals, and then you would delicately dab your fingertips on one of these beautiful embroidered napkins. You certainly wouldn't rub your hands on these napkins because that was considered very bad etiquette indeed. And then once you had gently dabbed your fingertips dry, you would then take a sip of mint or hibiscus tea, which you would find on this tray, and also maybe enjoy a teaspoon of something sweet, a sweet type of jam, or any type of sweet. So this is typically how you would have been welcomed into a home. And so these napkins are in pristine condition. And you will see that you have these double borders, and what you're actually looking at is one napkin that has been draped over a pole or a tube. And so you can see the front and the back, and they were so finely and exquisitely embroidered that it was very, very difficult to tell which, in fact, was the right side and the wrong side. And any of you who have tried your hand at embroidery will know what a great skill and how difficult and precise this is. So it's an absolute exquisite example of a hand embroidered napkin. And so to go back to the theme of water, what you will also see, if you look very closely, you'll see little scenes of villages or towns or cities, and they all link to the theme of water. I would encourage you to go to search the collections on the Whitworth's website, and you'll be able to see a close-up detail of the sea or the lake or the rivers and even little boats. And just to give you a closer look at one of these hand embroidered napkins, we have here this wonderful textile, and you may be thinking, well, what's this got to do with water? Well, in fact, what you're looking at is a hose which is pumping out water. The box that you see here would have been filled with water, and here is the pump, and here are the little poles that would have been carried to the scene of an emergency, such as a fire, and the fire would have been extinguished by this hose pipe, which would spurt out the water. And this embroidered napkin was celebrating this sense of civic pride when these portable fire engines came to the town or the city. And so you have an inscription relating to the city, and also you have these wonderful hand embroidered fire hoses that were on this napkin. And so you may be thinking, how did these wonderful embroidered napkins come into Manchester? Well, they were collected by a lady called Elsie Newberry, who was married to an archaeologist called Professor Percy Newberry. And they were alive during the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. And during that time, Percy Newberry travelled across countries like Turkey. And like many wives who were married to archaeologists, they developed their own interests, and Mrs. Newbury developed a great interest in collecting these textiles. And as a result of that interest, we have a lot of wonderful textiles in collections across the UK, and this is one example of the textile that she brought and found its way to Manchester. And of course, there are many other examples in other collections, and the Newbury collection is one of the most significant collections of textiles that we have at the Whitworth. So also as part of the collection and as part of the process of looking at the gaps in our collection and the four corners of one cloth exhibition, we realised that there needed to be a greater engagement with our Islamic communities. And so we invited people to come and share their objects, their textiles that told us the current day story of Islamic art and material culture. And we held an event at the Whitworth, inviting people to come and bring their items. And I went on to BBC Radio Manchester to also promote this event. And so there I am looking quite starstruck in the studio, a fabulous moment for me in my career. So what did we do and what did we receive? Well, we received a wonderful range of garments belonging to people from Manchester. On the left-hand side, we have a shawani that was hand embroidered for Muhammad Ullah, Muhammad Ullah, I should say, who is the chaplain at Manchester University. And you'll see that the shawani is embroidered with Pakistan and England. Muhammad is a very keen cricket fan, and he wore this during the Pakistan-England cricket matches. We also have garments that were worn during special moments of marriage, of festivals, and again, these belong to people who live in the Greater Manchester area. And it was very, very lovely to hear their stories, and we were able to tell the story of how they came to own these pieces and what it meant to them. And alongside personal garments, we also had a number of prayer mats, and these were lovely to have on display at the Whitworth, because despite the vast collection at the Whitworth, we didn't have any prayer mats. And so when you're putting together an exhibition on Islamic textiles, it's very nice to have a representation of these prayer mats. And so we have a range of prayer mats that were brought in and shared with us. And in the centre of this case, you'll see two printed prayer mats, and they're actually printed in the batik technique, and they're from Indonesia. And we were very fortunate that these now are part of the Whitworth's collection. So for the first time, and as a result of this exhibition, we now have these prayer mats in Manchester. One of the other objects that a colleague brought in was a viewfinder, and it was a wonderful object that was actually purchased by my colleague's grandparents when they went on the Hajj. and they brought back 2 of these viewfinders. One was given to the family in Bangladesh and one came to the family in Manchester. And you can see that in the viewfinder there were these wonderful views of the Kaaba in Mecca. And actually you'll see the full extent of the Kiswa and how huge the Kiswa actually is, where you can see it's covering the central stone of the Kaaba. And so just to finish with, and as we are in the 50th year of Bangladeshi independence, I wanted to show you a work by a Bangladeshi artist called Yasmin Jahan Napur. It's called Unity of the Untitled. It's handwoven in cotton and it was made in 2017, and it's part of the Whitworth's Textile Collection, and it was collected as part of the New Collecting Award funded by the Art Fund UK, and I was very lucky to be an award winner in 2019 that allowed me to build a collection of contemporary textile art from South Asia. So what you're looking at is a honeycomb-like structure, and you can see these gaps in this textile structure, and these gaps speak of and relate to the history of Bengal and the history of what is now Bangladesh, which had been occupied by the East India Company. And Yasmin, as an artist, works with textiles. She lives and works in Dhaka, and this history that has been left as a result of colonialism, imperialism, as a result of the East India Company, is still keenly felt today. And at that time, during the 17th century up to the 19th century, the East India Company set up a number of factories to manufacture textiles in the area. And one of the textiles that they were weaving was in fact cotton. And you may be aware that there is a very well-known story that as part of the punishment inflicted on the weavers by the East India Company was the cutting off of weavers' thumbs. And whilst we have no conclusive evidence of this story, it's certainly a well-known tale that people still talk about today, and certainly my own family members, family friends will immediately recall this story when anybody talks about the East India Company. And Yasmin felt that this story needed to be told in the context of the history. And so these white spaces represent gaps. They're negative spaces or empty spaces. And when we think about an empty space, it evokes a feeling of loss, something that is gone, something that is missing. And so what you have is a structure that brings together all these missing voices, all these people who suffered at this time and were part of this system of exploitation under the East India Company. And so we have this very poignant and moving title that's called Unity of the Untitled. And hopefully this piece will be on display again in the near future when the Whitworth is reopened and when all the items from the New Collecting Award go on display, all the artworks. And so just to reiterate, these collections across the Manchester Partnership belong to everyone. They are open and accessible to all, and we all have a say in how these objects are curated, how they're displayed, how they're talked about. And it's important that we all get involved and take an interest, because after all, it's our shared heritage, it's our shared culture. And the more we can make people aware of our heritage and culture, then the more dialogue we encourage. And just finally to say, please do keep an eye on what's happening in Manchester and Manchester Museum and the development of the new South Asia Gallery. So thank you very much. I will just make myself seen to say thank you. Thank you very much once again to my colleagues, Nasrat and Esme, and enjoy MACFEST. And I look forward to speaking to you shortly. Thank you very much.
Nusrat and Utra, it's time for you to answer some questions. We do have some in the audience.
Hello.
So Mariam, if you read one of the questions, I think there's something about embroidery.
Yes, there's a question about, says, was the embroidery on the napkins done within the home, or were they purchased from a workshop?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And unfortunately, we don't know for sure, because we don't have a complete paper record of where these pieces were actually purchased and how they were originally obtained by the person who gave these pieces to the Whitworth. However, given the skill of the embroidery and given the intricate details, it's very likely that it was done in a workshop, but it doesn't mean to say that it would have been not done in the home, because a lot of workshops would have employed needleworkers, embroiderers, and they would have completed these pieces in their home, and it may well have been sold through the workshop. But it's difficult to say unless we have conclusive records to tell us.
Okay. So the next question is that, do you promote local musicians from the Islamic tradition?
Shall I answer that, Uthra? Yeah. So as I mentioned in the earlier in the video, the South Asia Gallery will have a unique performance space at its centre, and I think that will be a great opportunity to showcase local and further afield musicians. So yeah, definitely we will have the opportunity to do that. So we hope that the space will promote those musicians, and if anyone is interested in that, do please get in touch with us. We do have, really excited to say we have somebody joining the team soon. It will be a fellow that is being funded by the Western Jurwid Foundation, and this fellowship will be for a creative programmer for the South Asian Gallery performance space, and they will work alongside myself and the wider team to then program for the performance space. So yeah, definitely we are hoping to include local musicians of all kind to be part of this, part of the South Asia Gallery.
I can add, Nusrat, as well. As part of MACFEST, we have our own musical events. We have one on the 28th of February, which is postponed till later. Normally it's held at the Whitworth Art Gallery. And then we have the Nile Band playing at the Lowry. So music is part of the festival as well. So Mariam, there's another question at the bottom.
Yes, says, when displaying religious artifacts, they need to be displayed sensitively. How do you achieve that?
So that's a really interesting question, and one that troubled us a lot when we were preparing for this exhibition. And we actually brought together a focus group which consisted of a cross-section of people from religious communities, but also people who taught in schools, people who work with these sorts of artifacts in different museums across the country. And we took on board their views, we listened to what they had to say. And so we wanted to be mindful of those sensitivities around displaying artifacts that had an overarching religious sentiment and a religious connection. And so we felt that it was only right that we were very transparent in how we put that exhibition together, and also to reflect those collaborative conversations that we had in the gallery. With Four Corners of One Cloth, because of the nature of how collections have been built up in museums, the awareness and knowledge that we have of what constitutes Islamic textiles was piecemeal. And so it was really important that we brought in our local communities to tell us what they felt about their culture and their religion, and how they thought about their own artifacts, their own important objects in their home, keepsakes, things that they treasure, to tell us about contemporary Islamic culture and religion. So we tried to get a balance, and we did engage in a lot of consultation work before we put the exhibition together. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, the next question is fascinating presentation, Utra. Will the South Asian Gallery also be looking at how South Asian textiles have influenced European design, especially contemporary design?
This, again, really fascinating area of discussion. And actually, what I didn't show you in the talk was that there was a case relating to the arts and crafts period. And at the Whitworth, we have a lot of printed textiles in particular relating to and by William Morris and all those arts and crafts designers from that period. What's really interesting is to see how motifs have been developed, how they have been, you can say, appropriated, depending on where and how these motifs have originated from Persia, as it then was, from the subcontinent. So it will be very exciting to open up this discussion, and also to understand through our collections where these motifs and designs can also be seen in the world, and how they've been circulated, and how they've evolved and changed. I mean, one of the most well-known motifs, of course, is the Paisley pattern, and that's known in different languages in different ways. Certainly it's catalogued in a lot of collections as the Boteh, B-O-T-E-H. But because of the industry in Scotland and the manufacturing of shawls, Paisley has become actually a very widespread and commonly used term for this distinctive motif. So yes, I hope we'll have more conversations that explore these evolutions of design.
All right, then one last question. Thank you so much for the fascinating talk. It is wonderful to be able to join in from afar for those of us who miss out on in-person events. Are there opportunities for individual artists and researchers to access items under normal circumstances?
Yes, absolutely. Under normal circumstances, all the collections are accessible and free to come and have a look at. We employ a booking system. Normally, the individual members of the public. You don't have to be an academic or an artist or a researcher. You can just be curious and want to know more and want to be able to see an artifact or an object for yourself in real life. So what you would normally do is book an appointment with the relevant curator, and the curator would book you in. You'd come into a secure space. You'd be given a few house rules on do's and don'ts, and then you will have time to look at the textile or the object at close range without having a glass screen in front of you, which I think is always a joy. But you're not allowed to touch it, so just bear that in mind. But ordinarily, yes. But in the meantime, whilst we're in this pandemic, I would encourage you to go online and do look and search the collections and see what you can find. Unfortunately, not every single object in a collection is necessarily photographed, and that then limits as to what you can see online. But I know across Manchester and in other museums and galleries, digitization and the photography of collections is really, really important because it allows greater accessibility to people all over the world.
Okay. Then how do you feel about objects which are pillaged being returned? I asked because major art auctioneers have been selling disputed items.
So when any object comes into a museum collection, we undertake what's called due diligence, and it's a process of doing as much detective work as we can to understand where and how this artifact was obtained. And we have to be satisfied that it's being sold to us or donated to us in good faith, and that the person has what's called clear and unequivocal title. So in other words, they haven't obtained it by illegal means. And so those checks and balances are in place before any object can come into a museum. Having said that, because of the history of collections and the way they have been acquired historically, there is a great deal of debate around repatriation and also around reassigning objects to their original cultures, to the original community groups. And there's a lot of work going on in museums and galleries across the whole world to address this in a more transparent way. And I know Manchester Museum are definitely one of the leaders in this field on repatriation.
Okay, then how do museums engage the young generation through schools with Islamic collections?
Well, just to say, when I was at the Whitworth, we did a lot of work with schools and colleges from a different range of age groups, right from tiny ones to university students. So every museum and gallery always has an active public program, and there are dedicated teams that actually focus on working with schools and colleges, and these people who run these teams are very experienced, and they have a huge amount of knowledge and awareness of what's going on in the curriculum, what's going on in schools, and are always very happy to connect with more schools and more teachers. So there is a lot of scope, but we need to do more, you know, certainly in terms of South Asian culture and history. You know, art and culture doesn't necessarily get as much airtime in curricula that we would like. And so museums and galleries play a huge role in promoting this part of our shared heritage, for want of a better term. Nasrat, would you like to come in with anything about schools and college education?
Well, in particular to this question, Manchester Museum has a project called Our Shared Cultural Heritage Project, and it works with the young people, 11 to 25-year-olds. and it's to embed people, young people, to have a voice within museums. And we've in our second year of this project, it's a really successful project. You can find more information about our shared cultural heritage. It's we call it OSH for short, and you can find more information on the website. But yeah, very actively working with young people, not only in this project but throughout schools and youth groups.
Okay. That's the last of our questions. Thank you so much, Mariam, for asking all those questions. And it's my time to now say thanks to these amazing two speakers of ours today. Thank you so much, Nusrat and Uthra. Nusrat, for a fab introduction to the South Asian Gallery, where we hope to be hosted, inshallah, next year. And thank you so much, Uthra, for the riveting talk on Islamic artifacts, textiles. They were absolutely gorgeous, and I learned so much. Thank you to all our attendees for joining us this afternoon. I really do hope you enjoyed it, as I have. I really have. Thank you to the MACFEST team who are supporting this event in promoting and managing this webinar. And please, everyone, do join us again. Guess what? We've got another treat for you at 2 o'clock. So grab yourself some lunch or tea. And if you haven't booked, quickly book again. And we will be exploring Saga of Colors, taking you on an international journey across the countries, exploring the use of colors in textiles, in monuments, including in the Muslim world. And it will be delivered by a lady sitting in France, Dr. Zohar Adrisi. And your host will be Barbara, and our guest speaker will be Chris, joining us from New York. So plenty of lovely things to see this afternoon. Thank you once again. Goodbye and assalamu alaikum.